Page 145. On his journey, Sir Gawain faces many dangers, violent giants, wild animals, and harsh weather, and treacherous terrain. Wherever he goes, he asks about the chapel's location, but no one knows where it is. Eventually, at Christmas time, he comes to a green castle where he is greeted warmly by the king and queen of that realm. When Gawain asks about the green chapel, the knight reveals that it is nearby, but insists that Gawain remain at their court until his appointment with the Green Knight. As part 2 of the tale closes, the king has gone away to hunt, but he and Gawain first make a pact. Whatever the king wins from the hunt, he will give to Gawain, and Gawain in exchange will give the king whatever he gains during the king's absence. The tale continues with 3 hunts. Before each, Gawain and the king renew their agreement to exchange winnings, and each time the king is away, the queen visits Gawain in his bedchamber and entices him with her beauty. The king's hunts increase in difficulty: a deer, a wild boar, and a wily fox, while the queen's advances become more difficult to resist. But being honorable, Gawain behaves virtuously. During the first hunt, the knight receives one kindly kiss from the queen and gives it to the king upon his return. During the second, Gawain receives 2 more, and likewise returns both to the king. But during the third hunt, the queen instead asks Gawain for a token of affection. When he admits he has none to give her, she gives him a token of her own. She offers him a ring of rich red gold, and the stunning stone set upon it stood proud, beaming and burning with the brightness of the sun. What wealth it was worth you can well imagine, but he would not accept it, and said straightway, "No tokens will I take at this time. I have nothing to give, so nothing will I gain." She insists. He receives it, but still he resists, and swears on his name as a knight to say no. Snubbed by his decision, she said to him then, "You refuse my ring because you find it too fine, and don't dare to be deeply indebted to me, so I give you my girdle, a lesser thing to gain." From around her body she unbuckled the belt, which tightened the tunic beneath her topcoat, a green silk girdle trimmed with gold, exquisitely edged in him by hand, and she sweetly beseeched Gawain to receive it in spite of his slightness, and hoped he would accept. But still he maintained he intended to take neither gold nor girdle until by God's grace the challenge he had chosen was finally achieved. "With apologies, I pray you are not displeased, but I must firmly refuse you, no matter how flattered I am. For all your grace I owe 1,000 thank yous, ma'am. I shall through sun and snow remain your loyal man." "And now he sends back my silk," the lady responded, "so simple in itself, or so it appears, so little and unlikely, worth nothing or less, but the knight who knew of the power knitted in it would pay a high price to possess it, probably. For the body which is bound with this green belt, as long as it is buckled robustly about him, will be safe against those who seek to strike him, and all the slyness on earth wouldn't see him slain." The man mulled it over, and it entered his mind that this girdle, being given, could be just the job to save him from the strike at his challenge at the chapel. With luck, it might let him escape with his life. So relenting at last, he let her speak, and promptly she pressed him to take the present, and he granted her wish, gave in with good grace, though the woman begged him not to whisper a word of this gift to her husband, and Gawain agreed. Those words of theirs within those walls should stay. His thanks are heartfelt then. No sooner can he say how much it matters when 3 kisses come his way. When the king returns, Sir Gawain gives him the queen's 3 kisses, but keeps the girdle, believing that it might save him from the Green Knight. Gawain says his goodbyes and retires for the night. The next morning he is to depart for the Green Chapel. Gawain arrays himself in fine clothes and armor for his trip, tying his most prized apparel, the green girdle, tightly about his waist. A guide leads him across the countryside, but terrified, turns back from the wilderness where the Green Knight resides. Gawain journeys along, and upon arriving at the Green Chapel is surprised to find it like any chapel he has ever seen, an earthen cave-like structure covered in grass. He enters the place to the sounds of an axe being sharpened on a grindstone, and calls for the giant to reveal himself. The Green Knight emerges, axe in hand, to greet his guest and recall the vow they made a year ago. Gawain remembers its terms and kneels down to receive 1 strike from the knight's axe. Suddenly the Green Knight summons all his strength, hoists the axe high over Gawain's head, lifts it aloft with every fiber of his being, of his life, and begins to bring home a bone-splitting blow. Had he seen it through as thoroughly as threatened, the man beneath him would have met his maker. But glimpsing the axe at the edge of his eye, bringing death earthwards as it arced through the air, and sensing its sharpness, Gawain shrank at the shoulders. The swinging axeman swerved from his stroke and reproached the young prince with piercing words. "Call yourself good, Sir Gawain," he goaded, "who faced down every foe in the field, but now flinches with fear at the foretaste of harm. Never have I known such a namby-pamby knight. Did I budge or even blink when you aimed the axe, or carp and quibble in King Arthur's castle, or flap when my head went flying to my feet? But entirely untouched, you are terror-struck. I'll be found the better fellow, since you were so feeble and frail." Gawain confessed, "I flinched at first, but will not fail. Though once my head's unhitched, it's off once and for all. So be brisk with the blow, bring it on the blade, deal me my destiny, and do it out of hand, and I'll stand the stroke without shiver or shudder, and be wasted by your weapon. You have my word." "Take this, then," said the other, throwing up the axe, menacing the young man with the gaze of a maniac. Then he launched his swing, but leaves him unscathed, withholds his arm before harm could be done, and Sir Gawain was motionless, never moved a muscle, but stood stone still, or as still as a tree stump anchored in the earth by 100 roots. Then the warrior in green mocked Gawain again. "Now you've plucked up your courage, I'll dispatch you properly. May the honorable knighthood heaped on you by Arthur, if it proves to be powerful, protect your pretty neck." That insulting slur to a spirited response. "Get hacking then, head-banger, your threats are hollow. Such huffing and fussing, you'll frighten your own heart." The green man said, "Since you speak so grandly, there'll be no more shilly-shallying. I shall shatter you right now." He stands to strike a sneer with bottom lip to brow, who fought Gawain if fear took hold. All hope is down. Hoisted and aimed, the axe hurtled downwards, the blade bearing down on the knight's bare neck. A ferocious blow, but far from being fatal. It skewed to one side, just skimming the skin, and finally snicked the fat of the flesh, so that bright red blood shot from body to earth. Seeing it shifting on the snowy ground, Gawain leapt forward, a spear's length at least, grabbed hold of his helmet and rammed it on his head, brought his shield to his side with a shimmy of his shoulder, then brandished his sword before blurting out brave words, because never since birth, as his mother's babe, was he half as happy as here and now. "Enough swiping, sir. You've swung your last swing. I've borne one blow without backing out. Go for me again, and you'll get some by return, with interest. Hit out and be hit in an instant, and hard. One axe attack, that's all. Now keep the covenant agreed in Arthur's hall, and hold the axe in hand." The warrior steps away and leans on his weapon, props the handle in the earth, and slouches on the head, and studies how Gawain is standing his ground, bold in his bearing, brave in his actions, armed and ready. In his heart he admires him, with volume but less violence in his voice. He replied with reaching words which rippled and rang, "Be a mite less feisty, fearless young fellow. No insulting or heinous incident has happened beyond the game we agreed on in the court of your king. One strike was promised, consider it served. From any lingering loyalties you are hereby released. Had I mustered all my muscle into one mighty blow, my axe would have dealt you your death without doubt. But my first strike fooled you, a feint no less, not fracturing your flesh, which was only fair in keeping with the contract we declared that first night, for with truthful behavior you honored my trust and gave up your gains as a good man should. Then I missed you once more, and this for the morning when you kissed my pretty wife and then kindly kissed me. So twice you were truthful, therefore twice I left no scar. The person who repays will live to feel no fear. The third time, though, you strayed and felt my blade, therefore. Because the belt you are bound with belongs to me. It was woven by my wife, so I knew it very well, and I know of your courtesies and conduct and kisses, and the wooing of my wife, for it was all my work. I sent her to test you, and in truth it turns out you're by far the most faultless fellow on earth. As a pearl is more prized than a pea which is white, So is Gawain among the gallant knights. But a little thing more. It was loyalty that you lacked, not because you're wicked or a womanizer or worse, but you loved your own life, so I blame you less. Gawain stood speechless for what seemed like a century, so shocked and ashamed that his stomach churned, and the fire of his blood brought flames to his face. And he wriggled and writhed at the other man's words. Then he tried to talk, and finding his tongue said, "A curse upon cowardice and covetousness. They breed villainy and vice and destroy all virtue." Then he grabbed the girdle and ungathered its knot and flung it in fury at the man in front. "My downfall and undoing, let the devil take it. Dread of the death blow and cowardly doubts meant I gave in to greed, and in doing so forgot the fidelity and kindness which every knight knows. As I feared, I am found to be flawed and false. Through treachery and untruth I have totally failed," said Gawain. "Such terrible mistakes I shall bear the blame, but tell me what it takes to clear my clouded name." The Green Lord laughed and leniently replied, "The harm which you cause me is wholly healed. By confessing your failings you are free from fault, and have openly paid penance at the point of my axe. I declare you purged, as polished and as pure as the day you were born, without blemish or blame, and this golden hemmed girdle I present as a gift, which is green like my gown. It's yours, Sir Gawain, a reminder of our meeting when you mix and mingle with princes and kings, and this keepsake will be proof to all chivalrous knights of your challenge in this chapel. But follow me home. New Year's far from finished. We'll resume our reveling with supper and song. What's more, my wife is waiting there, who flummoxed you before. This time you'll have in her a friend and not a foe." "Thank you," said the other, taking helmet from head, holding it in hand as he offered his thanks. "But I've loitered long enough. The Lord bless your life and bestow on you such honor as you surely deserve." Before leaving, Gawain swears to wear the girdle as a sad reminder of his sin. When he is tempted into pride in his virtue, it will keep him humble, reminding him of possible future failure. He also asks for the king's name, which is Bertilac. Bertilac in turn reveals the true sorceress, Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's half-sister, who studied with Merlin, the magician, created this green enchantment to test the Round Table's worth. So they clasped and kissed and made kindly commendations to the Prince of Paradise, and then parted in the cold, that pair. Our man, back on his mount, now hurtles home from there. The Green Knight leaves his ground to wander who knows where. So he winds through the wilds of the world once more, Gawain on Gringolet, by the grace of God. Under a roof sometimes, and sometimes roughing it, in the valleys and vales had adventures and victories, but time is too tight to tell how they went. Gawain returns to Camelot, recounts his adventures, including his breach of faith regarding the girdle. He delivers the shame of the moment and reveals the nick on his neck by the Green Knight's axe. Thereafter, every Round Table knight wears a green sash in honor of Sir Gawain, and as a reminder of both the frailty of their human hearts and the virtue of humility.